it could well meet the test. But if it's, perhaps if I could give an example in the schools area, that was put to me hypothetically in another forum. You know, suppose a mining company in a remote area establishes a school, but it says this school is established by the mining company only for the children of the employees of the mining company in that town. Would that be capable of being endorsed as a charity? Distinguish that from a mining company that sets up a school in the mining town because it sets up all the infrastructure in the mining town, but every child in that mining town is entitled to go to that school if they wish to. The fact that the only children who are there are children of employees of the mining company is irrelevant. One has a purpose that is limited according to the normal common law test of private benefit. The other is open in the sense that it is not limited simply to those who are under the control of those who have set it up.
Father Lucas, that's an extremely hypothetical example you've given us, and it's nothing like what happens in practical terms. Maybe if the miners paid a bit more tax, it wouldn't be an issue. You know, the mining companies don't set schools up. That's the reality. And the more relevant example is the example you've given, and that is about a retirement home. And all I'm saying is that you can have multi-millionaire retired merchant bankers come together and then establish this charitable, in inverted commas, trust, live their life out in absolute luxury and be subsidised by the public purse. Is that fair?
Well, it depends on how they've structured it, whether or not they're going to be subsidised by the public purse. But if the merchant bankers are setting this institution up only for themselves, under the common law, there is no way that would be regarded as being charitable. But there is a case, Senator, on this very point, and I'm sorry I don't have the reference with me, but the matter was tested in the Victorian Supreme Court, and I think it's the City of Geelong, is my recollection, but I stand corrected, or my memory may fail me there, but there was precisely a case on the very point of whether or not an aged care facility that looked after what we might call richer people could be charitable, and the court determined it could be. It's not so much the wealth of the people that you are looking after, it's whether those you are looking after are other than yourself. That's the test of charity. It's the otherness in the activity that is crucial to the test. And I think we would have to say that caring for rich people who might need some care can be just as charitable as caring for poor people. But they may need different sort of care. I had the experience in my parochial experience of moving from one of the poorest parishes in the Archdiocese of Sydney to one of the richest. It was quite a change from one day to the next, but I can assure you, Senator, as we will all know, that wealth in itself it does not take away many aspects of human need.
But it does provide the material means to have support without relying on the public purse.
In some instances, and so you would look then at the particular institution.
But if you're wealthy, if you're of wealthy means, surely you can look after yourself without requiring help from the public purse.
It would depend on the nature of the need, I would say, with respect, Senator, and the nature of the organisation that's providing.
It's an interesting concept, Father Lucas, and it's one that I haven't considered in the context that you've raised. I'm glad you have. Can I just move to another issue that has been discussed in the course of this inquiry, the issue of public benefit and the actions of individuals and vicarious liability of the organisation that individuals are employed in. And if I can cut straight to the point, you would know that this is the issue of should an organisation where there is significant child abuse have the benefit of support from government in terms of charitable status. I'm sure that's something the Church has turned its mind to. So I'm asking about the issue of when does this vicarious liability kick in, to say that the damage is so great that the benefit to the public of the charitable purpose is diminished and shouldn't be there.
I'm not sure how that would be measured, Senator. I mean, the law of vicarious liability, of course, as you know, excludes, generally speaking, criminal behaviour. An employer is generally not vicariously liable for the criminal actions of an employee under the general principles of the law. Can I say this, though, and I understand exactly the question that you're asking.
Okay, can I say, just doing this, we can't set a test for Scientology, as some have claimed we are trying to do, which we are not, and not have. I want a test that applies across all faith-based.
I appreciate what you're saying. Can I say this, though, and this muddies the water of what is an important question that you've asked. We tend to look at faith-based organisations as one organisation. If you take the church that I represent, the Catholic Church in Australia, if you put the word Catholic into the Australian business name register, search, there are 5,900 listed organisations. And they are not all of the Catholic organisations, they're only the ones with Catholic in the name. And there are a few in there that are in fact private organisations that for some reason have the word Catholic in it that have nothing to do with the church, very few of those. So you can't simply say there is one organisation when you start talking about faith-based organisations. The organisation, in fact, is a collection of organisations, so you have to drill down and look at the particulars there. And each one of those 5,900 entities, and as I said, that's not all of them, they're just the Catholic organisations with the word Catholic in the name.
Sure.
Each is separately endorsed according to a separate set of criteria. And so the benefit and detriment discussion that you engage in has to be particular to each one of those organisations.
Even though there's an overarching faith and an overarching set of values and principles?
But you can't import to the particular organisation that overarching set of principles because that's not measurable.
But don't you try to do that by setting standards for religious faith of teachers and the like?
You would certainly want to have a certain ethos within which those organisations operate. But to say that we wish to look at the entire 5,000 or more organisations and make some general judgment about the benefit of all of them as against the detriment caused by whatever bad behaviour is being perpetrated by what particular individuals is not an exercise, Senator, that I'm able to give any measure to.
Sure. Well, let's come back to one of those 5,000 odd. If one of those organisations don't meet the standards, breach the law, how do you deal with that currently? Not how does the church deal with it, how do you deal with it in terms of charitable status?
Well, if an organisation, in the way it fulfills its purposes, depending on what the purposes are, doesn't meet the test for public benefit, in other words, its purposes are contrary to public policy, its purposes are illegal, its purposes are contrary to the standards of the community, then that organisation in no sense should be endorsed as a charitable institution.
You see, this comes back to this test again when you talk about the purpose. I'm not arguing that the purpose of any of those 5,000 odd Catholic organisations is about child abuse. That's a nonsense, So this argument that the purpose has to be about child abuse, I can't understand that, to be honest. But if child abuse is part of the operation, but not the purpose, how do you deal with that? If it's there because some people are bad people, that's the, how do you deal with that?
Well, if there are individuals in any organisation that are engaged in child abuse, that is a grievous crime, and they need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Yeah.
Now, to say, is the organisation responsible for what they have done? If the organisation itself promotes it, and one could hypothesise, I have heard of organisations that talk about, sexual relations between adults and children as not being problematic. I've heard of such organisations promoting that view. That's contrary to the law in this country, and that organisation in no way could be endorsed. The difficulty we have, and I understand the import of your question, is the point at which you say that this particular activity, the child abuse that's going on, is endemic to or systemic within that particular organisation.